It's another Friday. Welcome to PM Personality Profile. My guest tonight, a conflict resolution, peace building and development professional. He is the former Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister of Ghana, United Nations Senior Mediation Advisor in the Central African Republic, Emmanuel Bombande. He is also the co-founder of the West Africa Network for Peace Building and currently chairs the board of the Global Partnership for the Prevention of Armed Conflict. I'm so excited to see you, Mr. Bombande. How have you been?
I'm doing fine. Thank you for the generous introduction. But you know, some of them in life you move on. I've handed over chair of the Global Partnership for the Prevention of Armed Conflict. But anyway.
Okay, so you used to chair.
Yes,
so now someone else is chairing.
Someone else is chairing.
But,
actually from Fiji. Yes, and then my role as senior advisor to the UN is now beyond Central Africa and in the mediation support unit of the UN. Yeah.
Great. So at a time when there's concern about the general insecurity of the country as we lead in the lead up to the 2020 elections, it's only fair that I gauge your mood on all the happenings in the country. We've had secessionist attacks, we've had armed robbery attacks, we've had murders, killings, if you like. I mean, violence in general. Where did we go wrong and where are we heading towards?
Well, thank you so much. This is a pertinent question. We are not forthright with a strong resolve to implement our own commitments that must undergird our efforts as a country to continue to progress and to pursue the efforts of human development. Now, we say that there are three things that we must anchor everything on if we want to have a modern progressive state: peace and security, development, and the respect for human rights. I will not pretend that we have not made progress. We have made progress since we went back to constitutional rule in the Fourth Republic. But we have reneged from what I would call an assertive engagement that would complete our project of good governance and ensure that leadership is truly at the service of the people. Several examples abound, but let me just take one typical example of decentralization. Up to now, we have refused to develop the political will collectively to ensure that at our district levels, we elect our leaders. And that for me is fundamental, because a lot of the corruption issues, a lot of the bad governance is because of too much centralization of governance, in which people in the regions of the hinterland who are very far from the center feel that there is too much decisions being made for them to the extent that they cannot even hold their local leaders accountable. And that is impacting negatively on our development effort. We've had a constitutional review process and we're supposed to have moved from there. There wasn't sufficient political will from the opposition at the time. Then we have had a new initiative in the current dispensation for the election of MMDCEs. There wasn't sufficient political will towards the very end in terms of how exactly that should look like. We've not been able to move forward on that. So that for me would be one example. But let me say this. It all revolves around leadership. Whatever we do, leadership is very, very important. How leadership is exemplary, is able to serve, is able to do so with respect and humility, is important. And you can see that so from our own context and spilling across into the entire West Africa region, things are not good. And I had this opportunity in a conversation with you in the studios not too long ago. And we are seeing that it is beginning to, if you call it, escalate in ways that will not be desirable. And that is why, at the end of the day, I take comfort in the people of Ghana always coming forward to talk about everything that matters, in order that the early warning is happening, because the people are also able to participate, because they are able to predict, they feel the threat, they are able to hold leadership accountable, and in so doing, it makes a difference. Let me give an example. When not too long ago, during the voter registration exercise, civil society, you in the media, people like us in peace building and mediation, were advising that let's be very careful that we do not deploy the Ghana Armed Forces in a way that could be misunderstood in the way they are coordinating and trying to enforce security. People thought Ghanaians were just simply critical of government. Today, I'm sure they will appreciate that, because the people were able to speak in unity and purpose. It influenced the decisions about how to continue to use the Ghana Armed Forces, which at the end of the day has benefited us. If we do not speak loudly enough, only God knows what human rights abuses would have occurred. And even the tensions we feel today could have been 10 times worse. And that is why our big brother Nigeria is in a situation that could have been avoided if they were able to take the measures that we took at the time, that all Ghanaians will say, be very careful how you deploy your military, how you deploy your police, so that the people can be protected and not rather threatened.
That was just by the way. Let me now find out, I'm curious to know that personality behind the conflict resolution, the peace building, development professional. Which part of the country do you come from first?
So I'm from Boku, a very vibrant commercial center in the Upper East region.
Okay.
We are the only municipality in Ghana that borders two countries.
Okay.
Burkina Faso directly to the north, and Togo to the northeast.
Okay.
There used to be a general public appreciation of Boku, that when civil servants in Ghana were posted to Boku, they never wanted to leave.
But you were born in Accra.
Yes.
You were born in Accra.
And there is a history to that. My parents migrated to come down, and that is how come I was born. But then I did not go to primary school down south. I went back home, and then I grew up under the strict guidance of my grandparents. But when I talk about my grandparents, I'm talking about a big extended family.
Okay.
Because my grandfather, you can describe my grandfather today as the chief environmentalist.
Okay. Why?
Because all the time of British colonial rule, he basically was the one who was the custodian of the greenery, the gardens, the forests, the mangoes that you see all around Boku. And no wonder in Kusal, which is the predominant dialect in Boku, he was called Zietnam, simply meaning the chief of the environment.
Okay.
Yeah. You see, there is a very interesting history in which, in the colonial era before we were born, education was frowned upon by people who, in their prominence of society, had children and wanted to make sure that these children were protected and brought up in a different way. So my father would be one of the people who literally was forced to go to school, and my grandfather literally walked to the school, held his hand and took him out. And his argument is, you don't subject my son to your Western
culture
of education.
Okay.
And that he is my firstborn, and he is my inheritance, and he must be like me. And I did not go to school. So my father learned to speak English. He's very good at what we would call the pidgin English.
Okay.
And it's because of his interaction and a lot of the work he did. But later on, his siblings would go to school. So my uncles would all later on go to school. And when I talk about my uncles, I'm talking about my uncles from different wives of my grandfather.
Okay.
And that's how come the homestead for me was so huge and so extended that it informed my childhood upbringing. Because here was I with my parents as the firstborn, and then all of a sudden, I'm disconnected.
Yeah.
So I felt I lost something in terms of the immediate love of the parents,
Yeah.
but then I was put in this bigger, extended family in which I had to learn to grow up in very interesting ways.
Okay.
But I'll never forget the stories in the evening,
Okay.
sitting around and listening to my grandmother when I'm in the compound house.
Okay.
And when I'm outside in the perimeter of our house, the stories were equal. And so I grew up truly passionate about storytelling.
Okay.
And storytelling for me is a passion. And I remember, without speaking too long on this, my grandfather always insisted, when you become an adult, the name, because the name is Bombande
Okay.
in Bisa,
Okay.
which is my, so my mother is
Which-
a Kusasi, my father is a Bisa.
Which means,
The Bombande is like nothing will happen to him
okay.
because it's framed as a question,
Okay.
Bombande, but it was
Bombande.
anglicized as Bombande. And my grandfather always said, whatever you do in life, don't bring that name into disrepute.
Okay. Bombande.
Yes. In other words, when you go out there, whatever you do, let the name carry the respect it deserves. Don't let that name be in disrepute for people to, if you would call it, treat it with scorn.
But in talking about the name Bombande also brings in the fact that you were named Lamusa at birth. And then your grandmother changed it to Habuka.
Yeah.
Which means what? Where does he come from?
Where does it come from?
In your language,
and
in
this
your
is because
dialect.
since I was not born directly in the home,
Okay.
so to speak, in the 60s, you cannot just name your child.
Okay.
So my father and my mother had to wait for the name to come.
Uh-huh.
But the circumstances were that as they waited, they needed.
They were in a haste to
Yes.
give you a name.
So the whole idea was, it was like literally towards dawn on a Friday. But then they did not like they couldn't find that equivalent. But the whole idea of Lamusa in Bisa, which is Thursday born,
Okay.
was probably more pleasing. But straight away, one of the grandmothers jumped and said, Habuka, simply meaning, where is he from? But the reason for it, is simple. My father had a first marriage that was short-lived.
Okay.
And people said it's probably because they couldn't have a child. Then my father married. And I did not come early. In other words, when my father married, it took more than 2 years, and I was not born.
To conceive you.
So then, the story at home was that my father cannot have a child.
Oh, wow.
And so when I was born, the name Habuka simply said, people are saying, my father cannot have a child. Where is this one from? Habuka. Habuka. Yeah.
So, I mean, so since then, you dropped Lamusa.
Yes.
So,
yes.
and then when you were baptized and you got Emmanuel,
That's right.
it became Emmanuel Habuka Bombande.
Yes.
You
yeah.
have quite a very interesting story growing up.
Yeah.
You were born in Accra, but then grew up went back to Boko,
Yeah.
and then came back to Accra.
Yeah.
How was it like? How was growing up like?
So, primary one, I was still literally tender. I think I went to primary one before
The age.
Yeah,
your
but
age.
I remember
That was less than 6 years then.
Yeah, yeah. And then the coup d'etat came that overthrew Kwame Nkrumah. And as little toddlers, we were bundled and made to be singing, and the military were holding these weapons. It was my first traumatic experience. I'm confused. I'm like, what is this? Because these people their faces were mean. But anyway, the story about my upbringing is one in which it was very complex.
Okay.
A very vibrant commercial town. The diversity is incredible. We call it today Kusau, the land of the Kusasis.
Okay.
But coexisting with other ethnic groups peacefully. But then the ambivalence is that violence was also part of this history as I grew up around the narrative of chieftaincy. Okay. But this narrative is not a narrative of my people. It's a narrative that was brought to them by British colonial rule.
Okay.
In which, if you were an ethnic group that did not have the history of chieftaincy, what indirect rule did was to bring a prince from an ethnic group that had the traditional system of chieftaincy in order to rule over, and that now gave the legitimacy for the British to rule indirectly through the chiefs. And so the Kusasis practiced what you would call the ruleship through the Tindana.
Okay.
The Tindana is the priest or the priestess.
Okay.
The British do not see that to have political legitimacy. And so they will say, wait a minute, we want an authority that understands how to rule. But as long as the British implanted this, there was no problem. As a matter of fact, there was peaceful coexistence. The problem was when the British were leaving and they realized that they had to make things right. We had the Lord Lostwell Commission of Inquiry in 1958 that then tried, not only in the Boku area, but across Ghana, to make sure that those who were traditional holders of the land could now be chiefs, but then work with those who had been brought in that type of environment to promote peace.
And it's interesting how you turned out somebody who grew up in an environment where there seemed to be no violence, everything, commercial violence and all of that.
Yeah.
But grew up loving to always broker peace. You started school from Boko,
Yeah.
then to Navrongo, and then you ended up at KNUST.
Yes.
Tell me about
with
it.
a stop in Nandong for A-level.
Okay.
Yes. Keep in mind, it was also in Boku, there was an attempt on the life of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah.
Okay.
In Kulungungu.
In Kulungungu,
So
yes.
you can understand the
Where
ambivalence of a wonderful people with peace, but then also confronted with violence.
With violence.
And that violence is a narrative implanted on them. And so I had this intuition growing up that something is definitely wrong. And I remember in one of the escalation, I was preparing, I think I was in Lower Siphon in Nandom Sek. I came home for holidays and the conflict escalated. And my mother was telling us to get a few belongings because we might have to leave the house. And that was the moment something told me no. And I told myself when I grew up, I want to be the one to stand in between people and be an intermediary and talk about peace. But I would confess, yeah, I never knew what that meant. I never knew what that meant. As a matter of fact, when I was completing my first degree in KNUST, I actually even applied to do my national service in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Okay.
But I never had a response.
And finally, you became a deputy foreign affairs minister.
Yeah, so anytime I worked in the foreign ministry, I said, God is an incredible God. God is just an incredible God.
This is where destiny took you.
Yes.
But let's look at your school days. I mean, in Boko, then to Navrongo, and then you said you made a stop at where?
Nandom Secondary
Nandom.
School. Because I went to Notre Dame, and Notre Dame only ended at Form 5 for O-level.
Okay.
And so all of us in Notre Dame had to apply for A-level in different schools.
Okay.
So I went to Nandom Secondary School for my A-level.
Okay.
And that is where I met people like, so people like Ben Kumbo was my senior, but I had gone in there and I met. So it was a very good perspective to be able to leave the Upper East and go to the Upper West. Then from there.
And then to the Ashanti region.
To the Ashanti region.
How was this whole journey like?
Beautiful in the sense that it makes a young woman or a young man to be exposed to his or her own country, Ghana. So I end up in KNUST. My roommate, Salas Abloso, in Unity Hall, is a Ghana.
Okay.
And there are times we study, and when we don't feel like sleeping, we lay on our beds and we talk till 2 a.m.
Okay.
But we are talking about life. We are talking about the human being. Then you go out into class. You meet people from all the, at that time, the 10 regions of Ghana.
Yeah.
So it's not just the formal education for a university degree, but it is what it takes for the complete training and formation of the young person so that you are of service to your country with integrity and with all the honesty that is required. And that's why I'm proud to say that some of us cannot be corrupted because of the way we were trained.
Tell me, when you were in school, were you, did you use that opportunity where what you learned from Boko, I mean, wanting peace around you all the time, did you have the opportunity, or even at that time, you still didn't understand what you wanted to do?
So in my interactions growing up in Boku, keep in mind that I first learned the value of inclusivity growing up. I grew up, as you mentioned, a Catholic. But I'm living in a hometown where the majority of the people are Muslim.
Wow.
We used to go to Maulidi as a festival, which was the Islamic schools coming together to perform. But we never saw it as an Islamic festival.
Okay.
We saw it as something beautiful for all of us to celebrate.
Okay.
And so we participated.
So you coexisted even at that age?
At that age.
And in your family, you had Muslims as well?
Some of my uncles are Muslim.
Okay.
In my own extended family, I have Muslims. There is a brother of mine. So after me, there is Ben. And after Ben, we have Moses. Then we have Roger. Edmond married into a Muslim family.
Okay.
And I went together with one of our uncles to plead for him to have
the woman.
The woman as a wife. So that's how I grew up. And to that extent, therefore, what inclusivity means is how do you respect the other?
Yeah.
Because Muslims will come to my house. In respecting their religion, I will do the type of things that make them comfortable in my house. Okay. Not because I am now different, but because that's the environment I live in. My friends would invariably be Muslim. So we'll be in a place where my Muslim friends will abstain from what is not their religion. But they will not condemn us if we wanted to have a drink that had alcohol in it.
Yeah.
And that's how life was beautiful.
Quite interesting. But what would you say were some of the challenges growing up, especially in school? And whilst in school, you mentioned Kumbo as your senior and all these people. Were you bad boys?
No, you know, first of all, I grew up, so in Notre Dame is a minor seminary.
Okay.
So the first objective was to train young men to be priests. And the second objective was that if you were not a priest, you become an active lay person in church.
Okay.
But then that brought along with it very interesting fundamental values built around the social teachings of the church. But I could now take that and transpose it to other faiths and understand how they grew up. So if I'm with somebody who completed TI Ahmadiyya, I perfectly understand the culture that person grew up in an Islamic school and the culture I grew up in. Okay. So it became very easy to be able to interact. You know, after the December 31st revolution, students had to evacuate Koko. So all students who were writing exams to enter university had to hold on.
Okay.
Because the universities were closed. So it was only when the academic system became normalized that we could now go to first year.
Okay.
But already at that time, I could see myself as the one who truly was a social being who loved to laugh and to be very happy with everybody. And so when I went back to do my national service, I was the entertainment master.
Oh.
And one of my secrets that you don't know is that I'm a very good DJ.
Oh, wow.
And
goodness.
I can mix.
You should do that for me.
Yes. And on Saturdays, we will make the students to really feel that they were all-rounded in the way they were being brought up. So they studied hard, but then they could also have good fun, and they should also be respectful. So I would say that I was a good boy growing up. Sometimes people thought that that could be a disadvantage because it's like, you know, these guys are trying to be different.
Okay.
But the reality is that we were like anybody.
I know around that time, the 60s, right?
Yeah.
It was actually a bit difficult financially when you had to get proper education.
Yes.
Were you okay around that time?
So then, so in the big extended family, your needs were the needs that was provided by everybody. Because communal support was very important.
Okay.
And so I wouldn't say that financially it was easy. But we were able to scrape by, but it will later on get difficult.
Okay.
And for the younger people today, they are not aware that in the 80s and 90s, Ghana was very, very difficult.
Yeah.
I remember going to Upper Six, and you queued without knowing what you could get in the shop because we needed soap to go to school.
Yeah.
And then you enter the shop and they'll tell you that you can have 1 bar of key soap, but the conditional sale is with a cutlass. What do I need a cutlass for? But let me say that by the time I'm like in sixth form and going to go to university, it was tough. And let me give you, my mother is my heroine in this world because I remember at one point in trying to go back to school, in trying to go back for a new semester, she literally took her valuable possessions in terms of her valuable bowls and ceramics that were kept to sell them in order that I will be able to go back to school. Especially that my brother after me had also come very rapidly, and whilst I was in KNUST, he was in Legon. And so it was not just me at that level of higher education, it was also with my sibling. And so yes, it was very difficult, but I must emphasize the appreciation of friends who saw you and you did not have to tell them your need, but they understood how you were supported. And we enjoyed the remaining ends of what good life in university campus was. Because it was one way in university that you had to supplement by cooking. And you had to learn how to manage yourself. He's a lawyer. He's like a great senior brother, Michael Alokre. He practices in Kumasi and taught law in social science in the University of Science, Kwame Nkrumah University of Science. He could just come to me and he would laugh. He says, "Poor student, look at how you are struggling. Either he has brought you food stuff or he has brought you some pocket money." So that's an example of how we grew up, in which you could depend on your community and on your friends, which then lessened that burden and made it much easier. And that's why today, when you work for your country to give back, you are giving back because people made you to be who you are.
They gave you the opportunity.
Who are we?
To
be able to say that on our own. We are what we are. So that is why it's very, very important. And I think for the generation behind us, you must always remember that even if it was your parents who bore the brunt of your education, you are in society and you are meant to serve society.
You owe society a duty.
Yes.
Emmanuel Habuka Bombande is my guest on PM Personality Profile, and I'm already enjoying this interview. He has traveled worldwide, across the length and breadth of the world to spread peace. When I return from this break, he will be sharing his experiences in all those countries. I mean, his work in brokering peace, both in Ghana and abroad. Stay with me. To so many conflict resolutions, even in this country, the Konkoma Nanumba crisis, the Nkonya Alavanyo crisis, even the Dagbon crisis, you contributed a lot. In fact, in 2005, you were awarded with the Millennium Excellence Peace Award for your dedication to using peace methods to ensure the coexistence of all in our society. I mean, you've worked in Kenya, you've worked in Nigeria, you've worked with ECOWAS, UN. Share with me, how has the experiences been like?
You are effective in bringing people to have a meaningful conversation about their afflictions, their discord, and their conflict, because they can see in you the dedication and the contribution that you make. But how does that come about? I've always said that my work globally in promoting peace started with home.
Okay.
So, in a very humble way, I'm happy I contributed to the dialogue in Boku, particularly between the Mampusi and the Kusasi, to be able to bring about the peace we are enjoying. And to bring leadership to understand that what is ahead of us is valuable. So when I look at elders like Sule Yirmiya from the Mampusi side, with people like John Ndebogri and Honorable Cletus Avoka from the Kusasi side, sitting in one room and talking about how peace should look like in Boku, I don't want to say I feel proud in a derogatory manner, but I feel that I'm humbled to have made that contribution. And associated with that is founding the West African Network for Peace Building. That became the infrastructure to help us to do that. In Dagbon, there was an interesting thing in which, still as a student practitioner, the Inter-NGO Consortium in Ghana was looking for expertise so that whilst they were intervening at the humanitarian level, we could facilitate dialogue. My professor was then teaching in the University of Pittsburgh. And I responded to it without even consulting him. That we were ready to come. But anyway, to cut that long story short, it was one of the most interesting journeys that defined how 7 ethnic groups that had deep suspicions about themselves could now build the peace that would later on become a very contributory effort. Then obviously, Dagon. But all these then prepared me in the practice to be able to share examples elsewhere. And so there are many instances, for example, in Central African Republic, where people think that peace is impossible. And I tell them, but do you think you are the only people who have conflict? I come from Ghana. We also have conflicts. The only difference is we do not allow those conflicts to become the type of conflicts that makes an entire country to implode into violence and destruction. And that even when the violence occurs, we do everything possible to mitigate it, to learn lessons from it, and to work at it, and to build those bonds of unity. And to that extent, I could contribute from the outside, as you have described, because it started from home. But that is also what has made me to understand that when you have a voice, whether you are a leader in politics or in society at the social level, even in the private sector, everything you say, you must reflect on its consequences. And that is why I don't run away from holding politicians accountable for their recklessness in the way they talk. Some politicians talk, and by the time they finish and they are walking out of the studio, they would have divided people.
Yeah.
If you are a politician and you want to serve society, you must rise above the fact that partisanship means we belong to different political parties, and keep in mind that when it comes to peace, anything that you say should build the peace, should bring unity, should bring the people in their difficulty to see one another as belonging to the same nation state, Ghana, and not to construct and frame sentences that divide and make people feel that you are northerners, or you are from the south, or you are from the Volta region. When you speak like that, you are not worth the position that you say you occupy.
And I know your job comes with the ups, positives and negatives.
Yes.
What would you say are your down moments in trying to broker peace all the time?
There was one evening, I was sitting in my living room around 11 p.m. and I looked on my phone and there was a text message and it says, Bombande, you must know that all it takes for you is one bullet.
Wow.
And you are out.
My goodness.
I looked at the telephone and then something came over me and I responded. Whilst you are shooting that one bullet, keep in mind I still love you.
Oh my God.
There was no response. It was much later.
Wow.
Yes. So then there are those moments in which you must understand that even when you are working for peace, the conflict entrepreneurs or those who saw that their entrenched position cannot allow them to get what they want.
Yeah.
So they
see you
turn
as
around
enemy
and see you, the peacemaker, as the enemy.
Yeah.
And we must always keep that in mind.
Yes.
But you must be generous in heart. Because you see, you are, for the lack of a better word, we use the mediator to describe what's happening a lot. You must have the heart that loves all the parties in the conflict equally. And even where you have certain principles and values that are more closer to you, if you sit mediating, you must do everything to come out of that so that everybody sees you to be professional and impartial. And that's why in mediation we say that it's not about being neutral, because all of us belong to something. It's more about how your professionalism makes you impartial. And the more you are impartial, the better you are able to facilitate a conversation and make people to begin to converge on common ground. And that is what leads to the peace. So I would say that on that spur of a moment, you can have those downward points.
Yeah.
But then there are also the moments in which, after working hard and arriving at an agreement, it becomes very difficult to implement.
Yeah.
For example, I flew in all the jungles of Central African Republic to carry the messages to the leaders of the armed groups to invite them to dialogue.
Wow.
So the Secretary General of the UN was supporting the African Union. And the African Union chairperson wrote a letter. And when we arrive, we have a conversation and we deliver that letter. And we now engage in a deep conversation about why we must end the war.
Yep.
Up to the Khartoum talks that created a peace agreement last year, February. But currently it is so difficult to implement that agreement. And so you must ask yourself, how do you continue to encourage and support people?
Yeah.
I'm a strong gender advocate
Yep.
because I've seen that across Africa, women are more in numbers promoting peace, but they are also excluded.
Yes.
So it's like one society is looking for peace, but the people who must be in the forefront are not there.
Are not there.
And the more you go to what we call track one is the highest level, you don't see women.
Yep.
And that's why I've been happy to work with my former boss, Honorable Hannah Tete, who is now the special representative of the Secretary General to the African Union. And I've had very deep conversations with her about the role of women in peace building. And one day I asked her, if you were not the foreign minister of Ghana before, you would not have had your present position. So how do we make sure that we have women leaders in order that those women leaders later on can become high-level promoters.
And help in brokering peace.
Help in brokering peace.
I'm so excited.
And when it comes to peace, it concerns all of us.
Yeah.
So we can never bring our political perspective to be predominant.
Yeah.
That's why her successor, Honorable Shirley Ayoko Butchwi, I'm happy to see her standing with the men in Abidjan and leading in the efforts to build peace in Cote d'Ivoire, because she is the chair of the Mediation and Security Council of ECOWAS.
Yeah.
If she was not made a foreign minister, how can she do what she's doing as a woman?
Yeah.
We would have had all the men. But I'm happy that our women must be there.
But also talking about politics, you were Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister. Was there a time that, I mean, looking at from where you're coming from, your background as a peace-building, conflict resolution person, and also representing a certain political party as Foreign Affairs Minister, there are some people who may not be happy with you, some people may not be happy with your ministry, and all sort of words could be used against you. Was there a point that you were like, oh my goodness, I should have stuck with my conflict resolution and not go here?
Keep in mind, I was not on the front line of politics. So when President Mahama wanted me initially, there was a resistance because people said, but what did he do? What did he bring to the party?
Yes.
you understand?
Definitely understand.
Which is natural. Because people feel that they have invested and this guy was doing his own things and you want to bring him.
Bring him in.
It took time. But keep in mind that the role of the foreign minister, because you are, as a deputy, you are going to assist. Then later on,
minister.
I thought it had been totally forgotten.
Okay.
So it never preoccupied my mind anymore. I know I was on a trip when during an ECOWAS summit, the president raised it again with my former boss. But nothing happened. Then I'm in the UN Security Council. I'm sitting behind His Excellency Mohammed Ibn Chambers as he was giving the state of peace and security for West Africa. And my phone was on
silence.
Vibration.
Okay.
But I could see my phone very busy. So at one point, I took a peek. And my daughter had asked me a very simple question. Is it true? So I said, Ansela, what are you talking about? Is it true? That it has been announced over Radio Ghana that you've been appointed as the Deputy Foreign Minister. So that was it. And so after that, there is a senior of mine called Musa Fatau, who is the director for the West Africa Division in the Department of Peacebuilding and Political Affairs.
Yeah.
We went to his office, and through him, I said, brother, this is what has happened at home. And he then broke the news to my former boss.
Okay.
And he looked at me and he said, Emmanuel, when your country needs you to serve, you go and you serve.
You don't turn your back.
You don't turn your back. They saw in you a certain value. That's why they asked you. And so, throughout the flight, flying back from New York to Dakar, he mentored me. Keep in mind, he was also former Deputy Foreign Minister.
Definitely.
He mentored me.
Wow.
But President Mahama told me, after he gave us the oath of office, he said, I want you to go to the foreign ministry and receive everybody as a Ghanaian. And I want you to do that because I know you are capable of doing it.
Wow.
I don't want you to go there and see your position as a position to promote your side of the political divide. And that's exactly what I did. I received people, for example, right now, NPP people from Boku, they came to visit me as Deputy Foreign Minister.
Wow.
I received them. And I received anybody who came to see me, not because you are NDC or you are NPP.
Great. I mean, that was a wonderful job you did. But of course, I'm taking you back to the women empowerment or women advocacy role that you've been, or the fight, or what you've been championing. There are 3 women on our 2020 ballot. I hope you're aware.
Yes.
That should come to you as good news.
Yes, it's very interesting to see women in the forefront of politics.
Yes.
As I said, participation of women and gender equality must be across board. But I also want women to take politics very seriously and be very actively engaged. I don't want a situation in which you are silent. And because it's election, then all of a sudden Ghanaians see you. Because accountability means we should be active throughout the period that leads into an election,
Yeah.
and not just when it's about time for elections. So I'm happy that women are quite engaged. I remember, I don't know whether I should talk about this, but I was in Istanbul. I was invited by the Turkish government.
Okay.
But at that time, I was still in civil society. And they have what they call the Istanbul Round Table on Mediation. And when I was coming back, lo and behold, I sat next to a dynamic former First Lady of Ghana, Konadu Agyeman-Rawlings.
Okay.
And we had a very meaningful conversation. And I kept on reminding her that Ghanaians would want to appreciate her legacy.
Okay.
Her legacy of being at the forefront of elevating women and putting them at the center. But obviously, if I'm talking with Honorable, Her Excellency, the former First Lady, Nana Konadu Agyeman-Rawlings, I will not pretend that my bias will not. So I, Emmanuel Habuka Bombande, would have preferred to lead a reconciliation effort for her to be back in NDC.
Okay.
And not to be where she is.
Wow.
I think she is more deserving in terms of her legacy to be back home in NDC and not in NDP.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
interesting. Now, we have less than 2 months into elections. What should be a watchword as we go into this crucial elections?
Tolerance. Tolerance, not because people will not be angry and disagree with the way things are done,
Yeah.
but that people will respect that if we allow anger to boil over and spill over, the violence that would ensue, we will not know how to stop it. Let's not put ourselves in a position in which we allow division, disunity, and discord on the grounds of politics make us not to be able to see one another, because at the end of the day, we will not be able to heal. Let's create a free, open space with fairness for all. And when Ghanaians make the decision, we will accept that, and for the next 4 years, we will be able to have a government, because it's not about winning an election. It's about how, after you have won an election, you are able to have good governance. If you cheat for 4 years, you'll be miserable.
And after the 4 years, people will hold you accountable.
And you will have no legacy. And accountability has very interesting ways of coming back to hit you.
The president has warned that the vigilantism and other offenses law would come into full activation as we gear up into the elections. And that means that nobody will be left off the hook.
Yeah.
No offender or anybody who perpetrates those kinds of violence will be left off the hook. For you, what will be your expectations? Because already people have their own views about this.
The law is only a guide. There is something which is more powerful and more predominant than the law, and it is the ethical scope of how a society is able to relate to each other, to one another.
Yeah.
If you think that you can do what is horrible, but as long as the law has not found you, you are okay, then we have not even started. So yes, under the circumstances, the vigilante law was passed. But it's not the vigilante law that will prevent vigilantism. It is the political will, the integrity, and the honesty of respecting everybody and making sure there is fairness that will make the elections to be peaceful, with integrity and non-violent. But there's another dimension. The whole of West Africa is looking at us. We are a reference of democracy in Africa. If we allow our elections to be violent, who else would African countries see as a role model? So we owe it to ourselves to have peace, but we also owe it to the continent of Africa to continue to be a good example.
2 boys, 2 girls, I mean, one boy.
Yes.
I'm talking about your children.
Yes.
You must be a happy father.
I'm a happy father. I'm very, my 2 daughters and my son have made life very purposeful. Because in the nature of my work, you find yourself in very difficult places all over. It's always good at the end of the day when you retire into your own private space, your hotel. It could be a beautiful hotel room, but it could also be a metal cage.
I'm sure you have an AK-47 because
Somewhere in the jungle.
you may have to be scaring all the guys away because they'll be coming around. Because I've seen one of them, very beautiful.
Your children, that's why God in his wisdom of creation wanted us to have family. But I'm saying this carefully because I don't want to come across as if to say, if you do not have a child, then you are, no.
Okay.
I believe that there are people on this earth who wanted a child and could not have a child. But we are all the same. But the point I'm making is that anywhere I am, they remind me of the purpose of my work.
Yeah.
Because it's about making this earth a beautiful place so that there is tolerance for everybody to be able to prosper.
What else makes you happy? Music?
Oh, I like music. And my music is... So, first of all, I'm very passionate about African music. So my playlist goes across the continent.
Okay.
But home is home. So how can I enjoy African music if I don't enjoy the music of Kofi Kinata? Things fall apart.
Oh, my goodness. So you love Things Fall Apart?
I love
Oh my
Things Fall
goodness,
Apart.
I think I should get Kofi Kinata on this show.
Yeah.
Because about 80% of the people I interview are in love with Kofi Kinata.
And,
do you know how to, do you have a favorite line?
trying to pick out my... But the whole song is a mirror that Kofi Kinata puts before us.
Okay.
And he wants us to look in that mirror and ask ourselves serious questions.
The hypocrisy.
The hypocrisy.
Nyame sompa na yere somya.
Yes.
Nyame sompa na yere somya.
I like the audacity of Sarkodie.
Okay.
And I like the creativity of King Promise.
So you like Chocho Muncho also,
Yeah.
and you like some African blend.
Yes, there is. So in my playlist that I continue to update, for example, there's Wally Seck. He's a Senegalese, fantastic musician. There is a Gambian, Sobate, and that is Kora music.
Okay.
And I like the deployment of the African instrumentality onto the music.
Yeah.
So I like Kora music.
You love to walk.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm not going to say much about it. He loves to walk. So let's see him doing his walking and share with us his passion whilst walking.
Before we are live.
Okay.
So that during the live session, you can ask questions and etc. But that 20-minute production took about 3 hours to do.
Wow. Yes.
Yeah. So the idea that you stood up and you started to walk again, it is not just the physical walking, but it is the energy, the impetus, and the strength that you found to stand up.
Be it at a faster pace.
All right. So then you now walk, but the walking now is meaningful. And it's very difficult for you to make the same mistakes because now you keep walking.
Yeah.
If the same challenges come your way, you know how to navigate your way.
Yeah.
And so we say keep walking.
Yeah.
When you go to a city like Dakar, in the morning or in the evening, you see so many people jogging.
Okay.
In Ghana, I don't see much of that.
Yes. Bombande, thank you so much for talking to us. I'm really, really grateful you allowed us into your life. Viewers, thanks so much for watching. Same time next week, we'll be coming your way with another interesting personality. Enjoy the rest of our programs.